Hi guys. So today what you guys are going to be doing is looking at something called phylogeny. So we already looked at karyotypes and we looked at alleles. So we know that all living things have DNA, and we know that DNA is organized into chromosomes, and a picture of that is what we call a karyotype. Now, what we're going to be looking at with this document that you see in front of you is the actual DNA that's inside of those chromosomes. So, if you remember from middle school, DNA is made up of four bases: A, T, G, and C. So, if you look right here, and just let me zoom in real quick, we see T's, C's, A's, G's, all of those different things. So DNA in your body is kind of like binary code in a computer, if you've ever heard of that. So computers code in ones and zeros, so an on and an off. And the order of the ones and zeros and how many there are codes for stuff to happen. In your body, instead of ones and zeros, we have A's, T's, G's, and C's. And each one of those letters is a different chemical that makes up the double strand of DNA. So your DNA gets passed to offspring. So some of the DNA is going to be the same, but some DNA is going to be different, because me and my husband made this nice little arts and crafts project. So she has a combination of both of our DNA. So little tiny changes can happen as well. And in the process of her growing and developing as a fetus, some other changes can happen. And that's why we have little subtle changes in our DNA. So if we look at all of these different lion prides that you mapped the other day, we can see some subtle changes. And here they're marked in different colors. So in this column, we have T's and C's that are slightly different. In this column, we have T's and C's that are slightly different. And then we have this random T that's different and this random G that's different. So how we figure out relationships is actually by looking at the number of differences. So some of the genes that I have in my body are going to be really, really similar to the genes that she has. And she's also going to have genes that are really similar to what my husband has. When we're looking at these different relationships, we can see that her compared maybe to her cousins, they're going to have some similarities, but also some more differences because they're more distantly related. This is where it gets really, really cool. Every single living thing has something called a mitochondria. So even if you don't necessarily remember what a mitochondria is, people usually remember that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. The mitochondria makes energy in the cell. So all living things have mitochondria. So little Greta here has mitochondria. My dog that's at my feet has mitochondria. This tree that's above me that has mitochondria, because all those things need energy. You need energy to grow, to hiccup like she's doing right now. You need energy to do all of that stuff. So we can actually look at DNA sequences that are in the mitochondria of every single living organism and in a specific part called cytochrome B. Okay, so we can look at the DNA sequences of the cytochrome B and look at how many differences there are to tell how closely or distantly related two organisms are. So with that in mind, I want you guys to look at these DNA sequences of these lions up here and answer the questions down below, and make sure you have your lion maps that you made the other day, because those are going to be really, really helpful. When you guys are done with that, come back to this video and I'm going to walk you through this part. So this second page, you do not have to do on your own. I'm going to do it on the screen so you can see it, and then you're going to answer the questions on the next page. So pause the video, work on that first page, and then when you're done, come back, and then we'll go through the second page together. All right, movie magic, second page. So what you should have seen on this first page is all of these sequences. So like Cameroon and Savo, if we look at them, for example, they only have one difference in their letter. that one difference means that they're pretty closely related. And if you look on a map, they are kind of close to each other, but far apart from all of the other lions. And that really, really makes sense because if we're looking at some of these other ones, so like Umfolzi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Kalahari, all of these have exactly the same sequence. And if we look on a map, they're all close together on the map. So that totally makes sense. So if we look at this, we can do something called a phylogenetic tree. So if I look at the actual gene sequence of the mitochondria, it's way more than the letters that I gave you. So what we are going to do is we are actually going to use a computer program to compare all of these sequences. Okay, so the name of this website is really, really cool, and it makes like a map of the genes. So we're going to click on Let's Go. And then let me just zoom out here. So what I'm going to do is paste all of my big DNA sequences in here. So I have Savo, I have, what's this one, Kalahari, all of those different ones. And then I am going to click Submit. And then we're going to give it a minute. So we'll be back with some movie magic once this all finishes running. All right, so it finished running and it gave us a tree image. So I'm going to look at this tree image. And basically, what it gave us is a map of the relationships between all of these different organisms. So, what this program actually did is it compared the differences of all of those different DNA sequences, and it made this little map here. So, here we have Kalahari and Umfolzi, and they are really closely related. And then next closest related to them would be Fanny Roberts. If we go down here, we see Cameroon and Savo are really close together, so they are closely related. And then we have this other guy out here, and that's a tiger. Whenever we're doing these DNA sequences, we always want to have something to compare them all to, and we call that our outlier. So for our outlier, we're always going to use an organism that we know is closely related, but not what we are looking at. So for us, lion is not a tiger, but they're both big cats. So we know that they are closely related in terms of the whole animal kingdom, but a lion and a tiger never would mate in the wild. One lives in Africa, one lives in India and Asia. So they can't get to each other. So we're going to use that to compare everything else to. So these phylogenetic trees are a really good way that we can actually see how closely or distantly related these things are. And if we look at this map, see we have Etosha and Bot. They are close. And then closely connected to them is Zambia. So I know that Etosha and Botswana are more closely related to each other than they are to Zambia. So that's kind of how one of these images works. So if we go back to your worksheet, we can look, and you can actually go back in the video and pause on the tree that I just showed you guys, that phylogenetic tree, and you can quick draw it in here. But to answer the questions, you guys are going to use this tree. So what I did is I made this one, it's a little bit easier to see than the one that the website gives you. I like how this one is arranged a little bit better. So you guys are going to use this one to answer the questions down below here, okay? So we're looking at this tree and looking at how closely or distantly related all of these different lion prides are, and then comparing that to the map to look at all the different relationships, okay? So I hope this makes sense to you guys. If you have problems, please ask Mr. Sampson or Mr. Smith. He is also a really, really good go-to person for this, but I hope this makes sense.